It is now my great pleasure to reintroduce our guest today. He is still the Walter F. LaFeber Professor of Government and Public Policy at Cornell University and a non-resident senior fellow in the Foreign Policy program at the Brookings Institution. He came on the podcast about a year ago to preview what we thought a second Trump term might look like, especially as it relates to whether we're living in an oligarchy, a plutocracy, a kleptocracy, a kakistocracy, and maybe if we should just coin one new term, a Trumpocracy, which is all four of those things rolled into one, plus other bad stuff. It's Tom Pepinsky. He's back. Welcome back to the show.
I'm glad to be back here with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming back.
Last year, the first question I asked you was on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the bastard child of Vladimir Putin and Mussolini, how screwed are we? What number are we at today, 1 year later, you think?
I mean, I don't think I'm going to retain some optimism about the long-term trajectory of this, but the situation here is not good. This is like 9.5.
Ooh.
It's the Trump administration.
Wait, where's the optimism? Hold on.
It's in the 0.5, Jason. Did you miss that?
Because I don't think we're stuck there. I think
Okay,
that the backlash is pretty clear. That people are angry all across the country. They're angry in big cities. They're angry in small towns. They're angry in suburban Fort Worth. That tells me that there's going to be some backlash that's going to be pretty serious. I still have a lot of concerns about how much damage the current administration can do. But if you were wondering if the current administration would assemble a secret police and tell it that it can kill people and doesn't have to issue warrants, well, that's exactly what they did.
Fair point.
And so that's where we are. And as a freedom-loving American who believes that the Constitution doesn't give me my rights, it just affirms my rights, I'm really concerned. But I think that I'm not alone, and that gives me some hope.
I think a year ago you defined oligarchs using political scientist Jeff Winter's definition was that people who defend their wealth using political means. Has the last year proceeded largely in that fashion, in the way you might have expected?
I think so. I mean, I could not have predicted all the specific insane details about
no, who could have?
this Melania movie business and, Tim Cook's behavior. But, the broad strokes, structurally speaking, rich people are defending their wealth. And I think the more interesting question is, do they know how to do that in the era of Trump? Like, are they good at doing the things that defend the wealth that they've had in a world in which the president just cannot, he doesn't believe any single thing and cannot keep a promise, which we all sort of knew, but now we're seeing it play out in action.
One of the interesting things that I think about all the time from our conversation last year is the story of Suharto, the Indonesian authoritarian dictator that you are an expert in, and his sort of corrupt reign over Indonesia in the 90s, and particularly how he struck a bit of a Faustian bargain with his people. They knew he was a crook that was enriching himself and his allies, but Indonesians were largely supportive because he did make good on a lot of his promises, like building infrastructure and getting the economy going and improving the overall quality of life for people in the country. Last year, you said that Trump lacks, this is a quote, lacks the mental capacity to engineer the kind of social and economic transformation that Suharto achieved in Indonesia, end quote. Well said. The results are in from a year. How do you think your prediction went?
I think that I was right.
Yeah.
I think that he does lack the mental capacity. But what I didn't understand, and now I do understand, is that he also lacks he doesn't intend to do that either. Like that is, that he does. It's not just that he can't. I don't think he wants to. I don't think he wants anything. I think it's really hard to treat him as like a fully functioning agent with intentions and desires. He may have like impulses and he may have reactions, but I don't think that he has surrounded himself with people who actually wish to do good in the world. And so we just had January with the worst job numbers that we've seen since 2009. All of the toys of the wealthy oligarchs are crashing. So Palantir's stock's in trouble, Bitcoin's in the garbage, Dogecoin is in the garbage. Elon Musk has to pretend that he wasn't part of the government now. None of these people have delivered on even the shitty promises they started off with. They haven't been able to deliver on those. And I think Americans are feeling it, and they don't like it very much.
I want to follow up on something you talked about there I actually had it as a question later, but how much do we know if Trump is even in charge, and how much does that matter historically in terms of other autocratic figures? Were they not in charge
Yeah,
necessarily?
so that's a wonderful question, and I like once a week I stay up late at night thinking about this. Like it keeps me from sleeping. So like, how would we know if Trump is actually in charge or not?
Mm.
Right.
Like what is our test? Um, I really have no idea if Trump is like literally has delegated basic functions to Stephen Miller or Marco Rubio. I happened to be in Indonesia a couple weeks ago, and I was talking with some Indonesian politicians who were trying to explain to me how they're dealing with the Trump administration. And this was right after Maduro was captured, and they were telling me that like what they know is that Trump is a very strong and capable leader, and they looked to the Maduro capture as evidence of this. And I tried to explain to them, but you have to pay attention to what happened the next day, which is that they all announced that they had no plan, and they all announced different ideas for what was going to follow on from that, because nobody is in charge. Nobody's actually in charge, and so they have to wait to see what Trump says on TV, and then they have to react to that, and then they have to go on TV and try to impress him
Right.
on the hope that he's watching. So I think it's really a fundamental question: who is in charge? I think what we're learning with some of the awful things happening in Minnesota is that one of the strategies that they seem to be following is having nobody be in charge, and so there's nobody who can unwind a decision
Right.
once it's made.
No leader means no accountability.
Exactly.
So a concern that some folks have that I used to dismiss, but I'm starting to no longer dismiss, is the idea that since they're doing so much unpopular shit so quickly and so frequently, and are seemingly unconcerned with the political backlash or their terrible polling or any political consequences, that they don't actually plan on letting us have either free and fair elections or elections at all this November. How concerned are you about this becoming real, and does it have any mirrors in other authoritarian regimes that you've studied?
I mean, on a dial of 0 to 10, I'm at a 2.5. So, but I should be at a firm 0. Like I should,
right?
In my entire life,
it should be no question we will have an election and the results will be honored, right?
Yes. This number is anything other than 0 is a real concern. I'm a little bit concerned. I don't think that the mechanics of stealing or preventing elections are easy to implement from Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to go to states and make states not do things, which is very, very hard to do. And there's enough ambition. There's enough ambitious people, both among Democrats and frankly among Republicans, who they don't believe and they have no reason to trust that Trump will give them power if they promise to not listen to the elections. So I think that it's very hard to actually steal the elections, but I do believe that they're going to try. They're going to try, and they're going to make things bad. And I do think we have to anticipate the things that the Trump administration is going to try to do, and plan in advance. And so, I think people should go figure out how elections are conducted in the towns and cities where they live, and they should go and they should plan. They should plan deliberately what are they going to do that day to make sure that they get to vote, and to make sure that everybody else where they live gets to vote. And if Bannon's little fantasy about sending ICE agents to stand outside of polling stations is going to come true, I think we all need to go. We need to go stand outside of polling stations.
Well, and it depends on where you are. In Colorado, that wouldn't matter because we all vote by mail ballot.
Right.
So they could stand outside there and no one comes in anyway. So
yeah. I once in 2008 I was living in Colorado and I caucused there. And I was like, oh, it's entirely different than how it works in the East Coast.
Right. And like their fundamental lack of understanding of the entire American system of elections, to say nothing of their ability to just kind of interfere with it and control it, I think does bring me from a 5 to a 2.5. But I agree with you. The number should be 0. His approval ratings, according to some aggregators, are like -17, -20 on net. People are not happy with this. I think a fair assessment is that he is about a 40% approval rating right now, which is basically the worst they've been since January 6, 2021, the attack on the Capitol. Do you think that will curtail their ambitions at all? Does that matter that his approval ratings are pretty low?
Well, it matters because they have to lie to him now, right? I don't like it's harder to believe that his claims about his popularity when the unbiased scientific polling shows that he's not very popular.
Like Fox News has him rated the lowest they've ever tested him, right? Like
yeah. I mean, it's just he is just not popular. It matters in the sense that like we believe that what he says even less than we normally do because we know what the truth is.
Right.
As to whether or not he cares about polling, actually, I don't know. I am certain that the people who are trying to who have like time horizons that extend beyond, the middle of this or the end of this year, are in the Republican Party and in the White House are starting to wonder what they're going to do. They're going to have to do something. But it's just going to be very hard to stop elections from happening. What they'll do, I suspect, if they try anything, is they'll just try to not seat the Congress. They'll just declare that
I thought about this
count.
too, but like this is another sort of wonderful, I think, consequence of the way we conduct elections in this country, at least for now, is like they're going to lose between 20 and 50 seats in the House, probably, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you envision like a large number of those losers like sticking around knowing that they lost? Like that's I think a check on the system is like if you're like Jeff Crank, a Republican from Colorado Springs, and you actually lose to Jessica Killen, like you're not going to go try and steal your job and say I'm not leaving. Like you're going to fucking leave, right?
Yeah. I just think it's going to be really hard for non-maniacs to continue the to continue the steal. People will be shamed,
right?
And there's just a lot of Brad Raffenspergers out there, people who are, they may be the same party, they may hold different, like wildly different views than I do, but they don't want to be part of stealing an election,
right?
And also just like the level of anger out there. Like, what is it that Americans want who don't like the president? It's sort of beyond partisanship right now. It's beyond policy platforms. We are angry and want someone to fight for us, right? And so we want the politician who's willing to show up and fight back. And I think that's a real change to the demeanor that the Democrats have had for many, many years. And I think there's a kind of clarity that comes in a time like this.
I saw it reported today that Trump is saying to Democratic Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer that he'll release some transportation funds if Penn Station will be renamed Trump Station, and there's something else that he wants.
Dulles. He wants
himself.
to rename Dulles. Yeah, awesome.
Is this something that is typical in this kind of authoritarian regime where a guy or a leader wants everything named after him?
I mean, the thing about it is, like, a real authoritarian regime wouldn't have to ask; they just do it.
That's true.
It's true. Like this. Like,
that's
I'm sorry for my foul language, but
although that's the Kennedy Center.
Yeah. He just do it, and then nobody went, and so we had to close it.
Right.
Which is very funny.
But these are the sorts of things that, like, I think, like, you're right that his handlers are like showing him fake polls and probably showing him AI slop of like Oregon burning to the ground or whatever to like encourage him to do more authoritarianism. But like these are the places where I think he knows he's losing. When he's like, I'm shutting down the Kennedy Center for renovations, and the reason is because they can't sell fucking tickets anymore, right?
Right. And it'd be really silly for him to show up there by himself and watch like Nazi opera or whatever he would watch. So I don't like Wagner, right? That's what they do.
Ride of the Valkyries over and over again.
Yeah, that's right. So I really don't. I think that it's very rare to see somebody like pleading for recognition the way that he is. He's begging. Like he's got some strings that he can pull. He's got some levers he can push. He can put pressure on things. But, like if you're Schumer and he's my senator, one of my senators, if you're Schumer and he says, I want you to name Penn Station Trump Station, you know what you can do? You can say, I have named it Trump Station. And then like
knowing you can just roll it back whenever you feel like it, right? Like,
yeah. I saw a funny joke. They should name Dulles after Trump. That's about right.
Because it is a thoroughly fucking unpleasant place to be.
But it shouldn't be Trump Airport. It should be Dulles Trump. That's the way that I think.
Oh, that's even better. You also predicted correctly that Trump would use his position to vastly increase his own personal fortune, and we're sorry to say that you appear to have been dead right about that. According to Forbes, Trump's net worth was about $3.7 billion before taking office the first time in 2016, about $3.9 billion when he was elected to his current term in 25, and now his estimated net worth sits at approximately $7.3 billion, which is about double what he had upon swearing in just 1 year ago. Where did that money come from? And is this how oligarchies tend to work?
Yeah, well, I think it's the word that I've been toying with is sultanism. He's like a sultan, right? So it is oligarchic in the sense that he and other wealthy people, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, Tim Cook, Mark Zuckerberg, etc., are using their political power and their money to defend their wealth. But like the stuff going to Trump is just bribes,
right?
They're just like those are bribes, and you bribe the Sultan by going in front of the Sultan and debasing yourself, fawning over the Sultan, and you can lie to the Sultan's face, and the Sultan may even know that you're lying, but you give the Sultan shiny baubles, and you name things after him, and you give him large amounts of money, and then
give him the FIFA Peace Prize.
Yeah, you give him the FIFA Peace Prize. Yeah, it's tremendous work all around. Yeah. Just, I mean,
has there ever been anything like the FIFA prize? I want to dig in on it for 1 second, because like that, like I threw shit across the room when I saw that happening. Like, is there an analog or a parallel anywhere on something as debasing as that?
I have never seen anything like the most corrupt organization on the planet was like, can we go lower? We did Qatar. Like how many people died to make those stadiums that nobody uses?
I mean,
I don't know.
Thousands of slaves, right? Like, yeah.
Can we do worse than that? How about we pretend that Donald Trump is the great giver of peace? And I mean, I've never seen anything like it. I don't know what the analog is, but in the obsequiousness, the ridiculousness of it, it is very much like how a court, like a sultan's court, will entertain the sultan, right? And the sultan may know that you're lying, but the sultan wants you to show how far you'll go, and that's how far they will go.
A year ago, you talked about the need to sort of pick fights and not let the wealthy people steal from you. We've seen varying degrees of pushback from Democrats in Congress. What's your assessment of that resistance so far, and what would you advise them to do now?
The Democrats in Congress have been slow to realize how angry the American people are. And the three of us were angry a year ago, right? But we were uncertain if we were just shit libs on a podcast being angry, or if we were really representing the American people. And you want to know what? We are the representatives. We are not abnormal. No, like regular normal people want their people, the Democrats in Congress, to fight for them. And what the Democrats have been slow to do is to do this. And the great problem that we face in this country on this regard is that we are a presidential system, so there's no leader of the opposition. Right. There's no Democrat who's in charge. We've got two. I heard a great interpretation of Schumer and Jeffries, which I think is really accurate. And this is not original to me, but I can't remember who told it to me. They are actually not leaders; they're whips. They're outstanding whips. They are really good at bringing their party together to get votes done. But they're not. And like there is somebody called the whip, but they're actually their main function is to whip.
They're not leading. They're consolidating. Yes. They're organizing.
Yes. And so to Jason, to your question of what do the Democrats need to do is they need to encourage as many people to try out as many ideas about how to speak up on behalf of the people of America. And I think that there's some surprising places that you can look now. I am very interested. I live in New York State. I'm very interested by the relationship between Hochul and Mamdani right now.
Right.
which Mamdani he's bringing a vibe to the mayor to the mayor's office in New York City, which is surprising and abnormal. Everything that we know about politics tells me that Hochul and Mamdani should not get along.
Right.
I don't think they did at the beginning, but they do seem to get along. And the deal is a great deal. Mamdani says, again, this is not a take of my own. I saw this online, and I think it's really wise. Mamdani's figured out that if you just act like a Democrat, you can do a little bit of socialism.
Yeah.
And Hochul has realized that actually voters want a little bit of socialism. And it's a great trade.
So yeah,
like Hochul is not a natural politician, but she early on started getting angry and fighting back and getting on TV, getting on the podcasts, getting on the reels, showing people that she doesn't want to put up with any of this shit from the administration. And that's like her fortune has done really well. That makes her a really good ally to Mamdani. I think that Pritzker's been trying to do the same. I think Newsom's been trying to do the same. It's interesting to me that executives, governors, are having a little bit more of a role here than members of Congress, but perhaps that's normal.
Let's dig into this a little bit more, because I like the way you put this, but I have a follow-up question. Like, and if you could couch this in any other historical examples, that'd be helpful too. What power does the opposition or the minority or the out party or the exile, depending on the circumstances, what do they really have? Because you hear these demands and they're not insane from the base, from people like us saying like, hey, fight back, do something.
Right.
And it seems like what voters mean is like, perform this ritual in public that we need to show you saying the right things, because there's some understanding that they don't really have a lot of power. So
right.
So the power lies with governors in some ways, but then Trump just takes money away. It lies with state attorneys general. That's where you're seeing the majority of the real fight come from, just because of their position to be able to effectuate resistance in the courts. What
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that's fair? And what mechanically should members of Congress be doing right now versus governors or state AGs who do have a little more room to operate in resistance?
I mean, that it's really tough. Schumer and Jeffries frustrate me, but I don't think that they have a lot of options for stopping
Right,
things.
we're
right?
all
they
mad that they have a bad hand, but they still have a bad hand, right?
They do have a bad hand. I'm willing to give them a little bit of slack on, they cannot actually themselves abolish ICE, right? That's not something that can be done in 2026, right? Not when they have zero. They don't have the court.
Right.
They don't have the presidency. They don't have the Congress. Either house. What they can do is they can make it really, really public what they stand for. And I think on that, Schumer and Jeffries have been slow to do this because they're whips, not leaders. But what they can do is they need to find those voices, and they need to realize that they have partners in the states state AGs and the governors who want to go on TV, and they want to do this work, and they want to make the case. I think Spanberger in Virginia looks tremendous. Mickey Sherrill looks tremendous. They want to be on TV. They have to pick things wisely. I'm from Pennsylvania. I want to like Shapiro. I don't think he's the guy for it at the moment. But finding the people, the Congress has the ability to be loud and noisy as they try to slow the stuff down as much as possible. The other thing is, the executions of 2 protesters and the other killings that happened, that have happened in Minnesota. There are Republicans. You can tell that they don't like this.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And what they are probably doing, which we don't see, is they're probably having quiet conversations all the way up to Ted Cruz level people with like, look, you guys don't want this. We don't want this. Like, what is the deal that we can strike? And I understand that the theater of politics has to be, you can never let anybody know that we're talking. But I have just zero doubt that there's some conversation happening behind the scenes. And they can do that. But we are angry. We don't have a Congress that can execute, that can legislate the way that we want. And so we're going to have to pull that Congress in the right direction. And that's going to happen by primarying Democrats who don't perform and building up the ones who do.
When you look at the last year, or as last year was happening, and considering what Trump is trying to do, were there some specific moments where you thought, "Ooh, that's a mistake. You shouldn't have done that"?
I mean, I don't think it was a good. I really don't think it was a good idea to call Alex Petty a terrorist.
Right.
Like that was.
And that was J.D. Vance, the vice president. That was Kristi Noem, the Secretary of Homeland Security. That was Caroline Leavitt, the official spokesperson. I mean, this was the message coming from the White House, right? Kash Patel tried it too.
Yeah, that whole thing. I mean, putting Kash Patel in charge of anything was, I would not have done that. But like that's a moment where I thought that for what you were trying to do, you were doing a bad job. That was a mistake. You should not have done that.
What would you have done if you were advising this, whatever he's trying to do? I mean, what should he have done?
I mean, you immediately just blame the two people who killed him.
Right. You throw the guys who pulled the trigger under the fucking wheels and say, like, we're going to get to the bottom of this and they'll never serve in this ever again. But our mission continues, right? Like,
yeah. Like they demonstrate exactly why we have high standards. Like this is the easiest win at all. But I don't know why they can't think that far ahead. I have a hypothesis,
seems like that
which is
Roy
that
Cohn theory of just never, ever, ever give an inch, always double down, right?
There's some of that. The other thing that I suspect is that these two officers could say some shit that, like discovery in an actual lawsuit would be bad. I think that what happens when you take a bunch of poorly trained, like bros, like heavy set bros, and give them tactical weapons and masks and tell them to march around and kill people, is that they develop some stories. And I suspect that it would not behoove the administration to, like, I bet you they're afraid at some level of what could come out. And they should be, because
makes sense.
I just think that we are gonna, when we learn what's been going on in these camps, when we learn how these teams of operators are marching around our cities and towns and detaining people and leaving their cars running and things like this, we're gonna discover abuse. We're gonna discover crimes. We're gonna discover things that we cannot even imagine, and they got to just keep that under control.
We're also starting to see some really concerning trends when it comes to media consolidation that you predicted we'd see as well. In particular, giants like Nexstar trying to buy up smaller networks like Tegna, which is home of the pod favorite 9 News in Denver. Barry Weiss, essentially a Trump propagandist at this point, being installed at CBS to give them a more pro-America posture as a news organization, to Jeff Bezos' obvious bribe to the Trump family that you mentioned on the flop of a Melania biopic while slashing budgets and staff at the Washington Post, to canceling Stephen Colbert and the assault on Jimmy Kimmel, Larry Ellison's purchase of the U.S. TikTok operation, Trump's sexist attacks against reporters like Caitlin Collins, and the list goes on. What page of the authoritarian playbook is this from, or are we charting new ground here as well?
Well, I think it's, if you control the government and you are aspiring fascist or whatever we want to call these people, you want to bring any organized media to heel, and they've done as much as they can. It's exactly what you would expect they would do. You allow people to purchase. You can't stop a billionaire from buying a newspaper, unfortunately.
Right.
And you make it very clear, because they come in a tuxedo to your inauguration dinner and they sit next to you, that like there's a win-win here. There's a gain from trade. So it doesn't surprise me whatsoever. I think it's very, very sad. I do think it's just like completely bonkers that none of these billionaires, miserable, terminally online billionaires, can figure out that you can live forever if you just act like a normal billionaire. And
right.
and like, you could seed any billionaire. Mark Cuban, if you are listening, you want to live forever, you can seed 50 independent news stations in the 50 largest metro areas. You can do it with the rounding errors on your tax return. And all you have to do is give them money to write the news. Do the fucking news, right? That's what Barry wants to do. Do the fucking news, and just be normal.
Right,
Just be normal. And
Just be
then,
normal with yes. That's
and
the phrase.
then you can open a library and call it the Mark Cuban Library in every town in America. Again, not going to cost you that much money. These billionaires are miserable and stupid. If they want to live forever, they can future-proof their legacy as much as they want. And instead, we got these pathetic jackasses like Elon Musk sitting online complaining about how being an 800 billionaire doesn't make him happy. Well, no shit, motherfucker, because you're an asshole to everybody.
That's solid. From your perspective, studying the backsliding of democracies, how meaningful are midterm elections at this stage? Can they really be a circuit breaker?
Oh yeah. I mean, like, if they lose both houses of Congress, it's game up.
They're
Right.
certainly going to lose the House, and there's no universe in which they should be losing the Senate. But like NRSC put out a memo yesterday saying, like, if we nominate Ken Paxton and they nominate James Talrico, like, we're probably going to lose Texas.
Yeah. I mean, they are, and the whole redistricting nightmare that they've started for themselves. I mean, catastrophic.
They lost
catastrophically
seats on net through that process, right?
Yeah, I think it's terrible that they did that, but you know, I have no. If we are fighting authoritarians, which I think we are not fighting people who disagree with us on tax rates or on woke.
Right.
We are fighting people who disagree with whether or not we ought to participate in collective self-governance.
Right.
And we can have there can be no mercy, right? We have to take every single opportunity that we can. And the midterms, you know, there's no country that has a political system quite like the United States, but our midterms in this country do give the opposition the ability to claim power. And the Trump administration simply cannot legislate by itself. It can do a lot of executive orders, and it can try to get Alito and those clowns in the court to pretend that Trump is the Sultan, and they can do as much as they want, but they can't write legislation. They can't write legislation really right now either.
Right.
But they certainly can't stop the Congress from operating. And what I suspect will happen is if the Democrats do take both houses of Congress, or even if they take just one, that what we'll observe is increasingly crazy behavior from the Trump White House. Like they'll pick as many fights as they can. They'll do outlandish things, and we'll have to get through that. But none of that's going to be good for the administration.
Is there a good example you can think of? You mentioned that the American system is different than others, but is there an example where like something happened in a leader authoritarian's term that stopped them or slowed it?
I'm gonna have to think about that. I want to say that like Bolsonaro's term ran into some congressional or their equivalent of parliamentary or legislative.
Okay.
But they never had this like clean two-party system that we have in this country.
Sure.
So it's always a little bit. Their legislatures works a little bit differently. I think that you could also probably look to French Fourth Republic as a moment in which you have, a different style of politician trying to aggrandize power, and this sort of gets frustrated, and then we end up with the Fifth Republic as a consequence of this. But nothing springs to mind exactly, except for Nixon. Right? This is like that's the parallel. Is a strong government, a strong president, who's pushing every limit, and Congress, once you lose control of Congress, so I guess he never had unified control. So the analogy isn't exactly the same. But there's nothing that strikes me as the immediate historical parallel. But the Democrats who are elected to Congress when the midterms happen are not going there looking to do normal politics. Right.
Yes.
They're looking there to stop the government from murdering people. And that is the standard that the voters want them to be held to, and that's the standard they're going to hold themselves to. And there's a whole bunch of people in Congress right now who are Democrats who are itching to do that. They just don't quite have the numbers.
Right. There's been I mean, and we've discussed various different labels for what's happening. Is it an oligarchy, kleptocracy, kakistocracy? Are these labels even useful? One of the debates that is happening a lot is this authoritarianism. Is it fascism? Do you have a sort of thought on what we should even call this? Or is this a whole different thing on its own category because Trump is uniquely weird and horrible in several different ways?
Well, I mean, I don't think it makes any sense to try to figure out what Trump believes.
Right.
Right.
Like his core beliefs don't matter. I don't think he has them. I think it's certainly it's authoritarian. It's certainly illiberal, right? It's certainly un-American. Like there's just no question. The Bill of Rights prevents these things from happening.
Right.
It could not be more clear. You cannot break into people's houses just because and kidnap them just because you can't be bothered to go get that warrant. You just can't do it, right? There's a lot of ink being spilled about whether or not it's fascism. I think it is. I think that there are clearly people who believe that the appropriate model of society is one in which everybody plays a specific role and the leader gets to decide what that role is. And your responsibility is to enable the greatness of the nation through submission to the leader's will. I mean, there's just zero doubt that that's what Stephen Miller wants. I believe that's a plausible interpretation of what Steve Bannon wants. Like, there's no question in my mind. Do we live under fascism at the moment? No. We live in a world in which we now know that there are fascists.
Right.
And there are fascists around. And I think that as an American liberal, I have to understand, and I've come to understand what the Nazi propagandist Carl Schmitt was saying was correct. Liberalism is very bad at apprehending its own enemy.
Right.
And he wrote that from the perspective of being that enemy. And so we, if you style yourself as an American liberal, we have to be able to name that enemy, and that enemy walks among us. And I don't think that there's just no reason to compromise. We can't compromise on these things. You cannot compromise on the Bill of Rights. You cannot compromise on equality. You cannot compromise on fellowship. These are values that, again, the Constitution doesn't give them to us. The Constitution affirms that we have them. Right? We are a free people, and we must act as if the people around us don't share that belief.
We talked about the midterm elections maybe being a way to short circuit this. Given Trump's poor health, if he dies before the end of his term, what does history tell us about what happens next?
I smile. It would be very sad if anybody died.
Yes, of course.
I'm against death.
Well, just statistically, he's going.
Yeah.
It may happen.
But like entertaining the possibility that an old man who's clearly very sick and talks about dying dies. I think we will see. It'll be chaos in Washington, right? I don't know. I don't have any insight about what's happening inside the White House.
Sure.
What factions are aligned with whom. But I just don't think it's very likely that Steve Miller likes J.D. Vance, or that either of them like Marco Rubio, or like any of them have anything good to say about Kristi Noem or Tulsi Gabbard or Kash Patel. My bet is that they all sit around hating each other, and they're all sitting around plotting what is the move that they're going to make at a time like this. So chaos, I suppose. But it'd be very hard. Immediately J.D. Vance will be the president. That's what's going to happen. And immediately it's going to be a question of, can he establish the same sort of political equilibrium of everybody fawning over the Sultan that Trump has been able to assemble. And I think that it's not out of the question that he could do it. He would be a focal point. The reason why he becomes the president immediately is a good one. So we shouldn't have no president. We should be able to identify who that person is. They have responsibilities and obligations immediately. But I just don't think that the world is going to continue on this current model with J.D. Vance in charge. So
is there a good historical example for that you can think of?
I mean, death of Stalin, right? Like death of Stalin is like, what is going to happen is for a while, they will not want people to know that he's dead.
Right.
They will need to figure out. They will need to figure out how to message that.
They will
Right? It's not
weekend at
like
Bernie's him for
Yeah,
a
it's full weekend at Bernie's
non-zero
at this
period
point.
of time, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Best case scenario, we learn about it in like an hour, but it's unlikely he's going to die in public, right? He'll probably die in his sleep, like most people do,
Right.
right? Or he'll die on the toilet or something like that, right? Like most people
Right,
do,
right,
It's just, and and then they're going to have to clean it up, and they're going to have to figure out what happens next, and it'll be very difficult, right? Can you imagine the phone call to Barry Weiss that happens, right? We need you to get on the news and do some patriotism for
Right.
JD Vance
Right.
right now.
Right.
Like that's the stuff that's going to happen.
Rally round the flag, please. Thank you.
Yes.
So we started this conversation by saying you are optimistic. We then went to very dark places for about 40 minutes. But I do want to end on that note. What gives you hope? Like, we think this particular group of ghouls is trying to do authoritarianism, but they're pretty dumb and pretty bad at it. And while they've notched some unfortunate, I guess, quote unquote, victories in terms of the policy program they were putting forward, they have failed tremendously to like consolidate power and do the authoritarianism the way that we think they want to. What gives you hope for the next year until we have you back on the podcast to talk again about how bad things are?
Yeah. I mean, I think federalism and the decentralized nature of this country makes a huge difference. And when you're the ruling party, federalism is a big pain in the neck. But when you're the opposition party, federalism is really, really good. It gives me hope that my fellow Americans are just as mad as we are.
Mm-hmm.
Like people do not like what they are doing in Minneapolis, right? They don't like it,
Right.
and that if it were the case that Americans didn't care, or that Americans were indifferent, it would make me very, very upset. But the numbers on everything that Trump touches are in the toilet,
Right.
and immigration is not immigration and thugs being able to walk around in Punisher masks and pretend that they're operators and murder people every once in a while. That was their big play.
Right.
And Americans don't like it. So that gives me a lot of optimism. I also think that the upcoming political cleavage is not going to be about policy. It's about fight versus don't fight.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the space that Americans need to be in right now. And I'm glad to know that Americans want to fight. Right. And I do too. Right. I want to fight for American values. And, what's really nice, we're having a nice anniversary coming up, right? A Declaration of Independence, right? In which a bunch of free men declared that they are free, not because the government gives them their freedom, but because they were born that way.
Right.
And yeah, they were some bad guys.
Imperfect messengers, a work in progress, to be sure.
Yes. Right. You certainly shouldn't sell your own children into slavery. However,
As a baseline.
I also believe that what they wrote down has real value and that the anti-Trump coalition can profit from this. To speak about freedom, equality, and fellowship is actually a really great American thing to do, and we can spend all summer doing it.
You see the huge American flag behind me. I mean, I'm right there with
man.
you. I don't think we should be abandoning our values to these fucking losers or these freaks, and we should be the patriots. We should grab the flag, and we should run up the hill and beat these guys. Well,
yeah, they're the ones who suck.
They're the ones who suck, and they're the ones who hate this fucking country and everything it stands for, and we are going to win. I believe that. Well, Professor Tom Pepinsky from Cornell University, thank you so much for coming back to the show. Can we have you back next winter and do it again?
Whenever you want. I'm here. I didn't even give you any Soundgarden references.
What's on your 90s rock playlist right now?
Listening to a lot of Alice in Chains.
Hell yeah, very good.
Trump 2, Into the Flood again. Same old shit it was back then.
Very good. I'm revisiting the Smashing Pumpkins Melancholy. Just celebrated a 30-year anniversary. That's how old we fucking are. So I gave that one a spin the other day. It holds up. What a great record.
Hell yeah. Well, my son, so if 1979 were written right now, it'd be about 2009.
Yeah.
And that's the year my son was born. So I'm exactly that old.
That's remarkable. Well, Tom Pepinsky, thank you so much for coming back on the show. It's great to see you. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you next year.
Thanks. Good to see you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.